Hello, my students. It's me, Mr. Weaver. Mrs. Jackson is over there working as well, and she'll be helping. And we are going to create for you a reading and a little bit of commentary over the Odyssey, this epic that you are required to read in class. And I'm sure you're very, very excited about that. Well, I'm excited to read it to you. So is Mrs. Jackson. And part of our goal for this is to make this accessible to you, to make it not just some dry book that you have to read, but to make it something that you can enjoy, that you can be engaged with. And so I'm going to start with chapter 1. We're going to make a PowerPoint for you so that you can learn a lot of the background information. And we'll be going over that with you in class as well. That'll make these readings a lot more accessible. So what we're going to do is read it, and we will pause from time to time, give you a little bit of commentary, just kind of our thoughts as we read as mature readers, and hopefully that will help you so that as you read the Odyssey you can enjoy it and get a lot out of it, because let's be honest, this is an amazing piece of literature. This piece of literature was written thousands of years ago, and yet we still read it today. There must be some enduring quality to it. There are many enduring qualities. Before we begin, just be aware that there are a couple things you can be looking for when you start any piece of literature. That's the setting and the characters that are introduced in the exposition here at the beginning of the story. And there's also something a little different with an epic, and that's called invoking the muse. So Homer, our bard, our author, has started this with invoking the muse. That means you call out to the muse. To invoke means to use your voice. Vok means voice. And so he is invoking the muse, asking the muse to literally sing through him to tell the story. You're going to see a lot of the supernatural in this story, which is another characteristic of the epic. And it starts out with one of the first words being a muse, which is, of course, one of the goddesses in Greek mythology. You're also going to see that this story does not start at the beginning chronologically. It starts what's called in medias res, which is a Latin term for in the middle of things. So we start this story with a lot of things already having happened. And then what we're going to do is do flashbacks to some previous events that have happened. And then Telemachus and Odysseus, our main characters, will meet in the middle of the story. And from there, chronologically, it'll be one line all the way up to the climax at the end. So without giving too much commentary at the beginning, let me just read it to you and follow along in your books. Get your book out, pause it if you need to. Just listening to me is not enough. You need to see the words, interact with the words. And you can pause this video whenever you want so that you can understand what's going on. You can go back and re-watch it at any point to make sure you get as much out of this as you possibly can. All right, my students, it is time to read the Odyssey by Homer. Sing in me, muse, and through me tell the story of that man, skilled in all ways of contending, the wanderer, harried for years on end after he plundered the stronghold on the proud height of Troy. We learn here that we're going to be singing about a man, and of course that man is Odysseus, our hero. You'll see some epithets here. Epithets are little adjectives to describe a character, sometimes right before the name, right after, or in place of that character. And we see that Odysseus is a man skilled in all ways of contending. He's a wanderer. There must be some wandering going on in this epic. And he was harried for years on end. No, he didn't have a hairy chest. Well, he may have. No, he was harassed. To be harried is to be harassed. And we learn that all of this story is going to happen after he plundered Troy. In other words, they burned Troy to the ground, they stole a bunch of their goods, and they left. And so you can read about that in the Iliad if you choose to read it, about the story of the Trojan War. Let's continue. He saw the townlands and learned the minds of many distant men, and weathered many bitter nights and days in his deep heart at sea, while he fought only to save his life, to bring his shipmates home. But not by will nor valor could he save them, for their own recklessness destroyed them all. Children and fools, they killed and feasted on the cattle of Lord Helios the sun, And he who moves all day through heaven took from their eyes the dawn of their return. Okay, so we're going to learn right here, Odysseus is the only one of his men who makes it home. So that kind of gave that away. All of his men are going to die at some point before they get home, except Odysseus. And we learn it's because of their own recklessness. So we'll see more about that in chapter 10. Actually, chapter 12. Of these adventures, Muse, daughter of Zeus, tell us in our time. Lift the great song again. Begin when all the rest who left behind them headlong death in battle or at sea had long ago returned, while he alone still hungered for a wife, for home and wife. So we learn that everyone who left Troy is either dead or made it home by now. Odysseus is the only one still trying to get home. Her ladyship, Calypso, clung to him in her sea-hallowed caves, a nymph, immortal and most beautiful, who craved him for her own. So right now, Odysseus is with an immortal nymph named Calypso, and she's clinging to him. Interesting diction. I wonder how she's clinging to him. Well, you're a teenager, you can figure that out. And when long years and seasons wheeling brought around that point of time ordained for him to make his passage homeward, trials and dangers even so attended him, even in Ithaca, near those he loved. So we learn here, when he gets home to Ithaca, he's still going to have a bunch of trials that he's going to have to endure. Yet all the gods had pitied Lord Odysseus, all but Poseidon, raging cold and rough against the brave king till he came ashore at last on his own land. Poseidon doesn't like Odysseus. We will learn why, don't worry. But now that god, that's Poseidon, had gone far off among the sunburnt races, most remote of men, at earth's two verges, in sunset lands and lands of the rising sun, to be regaled by smoke of thigh bones burning, haunches of rams and bulls 100-fold. He lingered delighted at the banquet side. You're going to see a lot of images of sacrifice in this epic. The Greeks at this time, they did a lot of sacrificing to the gods. So when you see stuff about thigh bones and bulls and rams and all kinds of animals being burned or killed, it was a very common practice at the time to kill animals to get some kind of appeasement from the gods or some kind of blessing from the gods. Now watch this. We've just kind of had this general setting here at the beginning. We know we're in Greece, we know the time period, we know it's about Odysseus, but now we're going to go to a specific place. We're going to go first to Mount Olympus. In the bright hall of Zeus upon Olympus, the other gods were all at home, and Zeus, the father of gods and men, made conversation. For he had meditated on Aegisthus, dead by the hand of Agamemnon's son Orestes, and spoke his thought aloud before them all. Aegisthus, Agamemnon, Orestes, who the heck are these people? Well, my students, you see, there is something that happened about 7 years before this story, and that's the story of Agamemnon's return home. You see, Agamemnon was like the commander-in-chief of the Greeks when they destroyed Troy. And before they had gone to Troy, he killed his own daughter to get some wins so that he could get to Troy to fight a war. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding? Yeah, he really killed his own daughter. So guess who's a little upset about that? Oh, his wife, Clytemnestra. Yeah, my hubby killed my daughter so he could go fight a war. I'm not happy about that. So when Agamemnon is away, Clytemnestra, she kind of shacks up with Aegisthus, who is Agamemnon's cousin. So she kept it in the family, but that's messed up. And so when he's gone, they're having this affair, and they're kind of ruling the kingdom of Argos together. And then when Agamemnon gets home, he is being celebrated. Here he is, this commander-in-chief of destroying the Trojans. He comes home with all this loot. He brings home a trophy wife named Cassandra. Messed up, I know, but he did. And so he comes home, and Clytemnestra welcomes him in, and he sits down to eat, and then she and Aegisthus, they murder Agamemnon. They murder Cassandra. And so that's what's happened. Well, here you're going to see Zeus talking about Aegisthus. And you're going to see that Zeus is a little upset because The human beings always complain about all of these bad things that happen to them. And Zeus is like, what do you mean bad things? I warned you not to do this. I warned you that Aegisthus would kill you when you get home. And you know what? Now you're dead. Oh, and I warned you, Aegisthus, if you killed Agamemnon, you would be killed by his son, Orestes. And yes, Orestes, good old Agamemnon's son, came back and killed Aegisthus. Oh, and he killed his mom too. Think about that. He had to decide, do I kill my mom and avenge my dad, which is killing my mom, or do I let my dad's death go unavenged? Tough decision. So Orestes came back, and he did kill his mom and Aegisthus, and but he did end this curse over that house of Atreus, which is nice, I guess. Anyway, I've been talking too long. Let's just read. Let's see what Zeus says. My word, how mortals take the gods to task. All their afflictions come from us, we hear. And what of their own failings? Greed and folly double the suffering in the lot of man. See how Aegisthus, for his double portion, stole Agamemnon's wife and killed the soldier on his homecoming day. And yet Aegisthus knew that his own doom lay in this. We gods had warned him, sent down Hermes, Argiphantes, our most beloved courier, to say, don't kill the man, don't touch his wife, or face a reckoning when with Orestes the day he comes of age and wants his patrimony. Friendly advice, but would Aegisthus take it? Now he has paid the reckoning in full. The gray-eyed goddess Athena replied to Zeus. Oh, gray-eyed goddess, that's a nice epithet. You'll see that one a lot for Athena. Oh, and by the way, Athena, she's a big deal in this epic. She's kind of the patron goddess of Odysseus, and she's going to defend him to the end. So let's see what she says to Zeus. Oh, Majesty, oh, Father of us all, that man is in the dust indeed, and justly. So perish all who do what he had done. But my own heart is broken for Odysseus, the mastermind of war, so long a castaway upon an island in the running sea, a wooded island in the sea's middle. And there's a goddess in the place, the daughter of one whose baleful mind knows all the deeps of the blue sea, Atlas, who holds the columns that bear from land the great thrust of the sky. His daughter will not let Odysseus go. Poor mournful man. She keeps on coaxing him with her beguiling talk to turn his mind from Ithaca. But such desire is in him merely to see the hearth smoke leaping upward from his own island, that he longs to die. Are you not moved by this, Lord of Olympus? Had you no pleasure from Odysseus' offerings beside the Argive ships on Troy's wide seaboard? Oh, Zeus, what do you hold against him now? Well, we learn here that Calypso's keeping Odysseus. We also learn that she's the daughter of Atlas, who is a Titan who holds the vault of heaven on his shoulders. And of course, Athena is talking to Zeus saying, hey, he did so well for you in Troy. What do you have against Odysseus now? Why don't you let him go home? To this, the summoner of cloud replied. Isn't that a cool epithet? Summoner of cloud. I'd like to be called that. That'd be cool.
What's an epithet?
Oh, an epithet. An epithet's an adjective that's usually before, after, or in place of the name of a character. And good old Hummer loved to use epithets. It's a nice way to bring some characterization out about a character without going into a lot of detail. So, yeah, let's continue. My child, says Zeus, what strange remarks you let escape you. Could I forget that kingly man Odysseus? There is no mortal half so wise. First description of Odysseus from Zeus, wise. No mortal gave so much to the lords of open sky. Only the god who laps the land and water, Poseidon, he bears the fighter an old grudge, since he poked out the eye of Polyphemus, brawniest of the Cyclopes. Who bore that giant lout? Thusa, daughter of Phorcys, an offshore sea lord. For this nymph had lain with Lord Poseidon in her sea-hallowed caves. Naturally, the god, after the blinding, mind you, he does not kill the man, he only buffets him away from home. But come now, we are all at leisure here. Let us take up this matter of his return, that he may sail. Poseidon must relent, for being quarrelsome will get him nowhere, one god flouting the will of all the gods. We learn why he's upset at Odysseus, because apparently Odysseus poked out the Cyclops' eye, and the Cyclops' name is Polyphemus. So Apparently, Poseidon shacked up with a sea nymph named Thusa, and they bore a cyclops out of that. I don't understand the genetics either. Weird, but that's what happened. And so this is technically Poseidon's son. And, this is not like a Percy Jackson son where he actually cares for him. It's just, I don't know, it's a cyclops son. And so when Odysseus poked out his eye, Poseidon had a grudge against him. I mean, it is his son, so it makes sense. But here Zeus says, Poseidon, you got to relent. You got to let Odysseus go home. All right. The gray-eyed goddess Athena answered him, "O Majesty, O Father of us all, if it now please the blissful gods that wise Odysseus reaches home again, let the wayfinder Hermes cross the sea to the island of Ogygia." That's where Calypso lives. "To let him tell our fixed intent to the nymph with pretty braids, and let the steadfast man depart for home. For my part, I shall visit Ithaca to put more courage in the sun, and rouse him to call an assembly of the islanders, a Achaean gentleman with flowing hair. He must warn off that wolf pack of the suitors who prey upon his flocks and dusky cattle. I'll send him to the mainland then, to Sparta by the sand beach of Pylos. Let him find news of his dear father where he may, and win his own renown about the world." So Athena says, I'm going to go to Odysseus' home. It's called Ithaca, kind of a big deal. And I'm going to put courage in Telemachus. Telemachus
Perfect, please. Could someone from service please call the high school office?
That was either the gods or an announcement. Bizarre. So we are going to see Athena travel to Ithaca to warn Telemachus and to send Telemachus on a journey to win renown, which is fame in the world. So that's what's going to happen. Watch this setting change. Kind of interesting. She bent to tie her beautiful sandals on, ambrosial, golden, that carry her over water or over endless land on the wings of the wind, and took the great haft of her spear in hand, that bronze-shod spear that child of power can use to break in wrath long battle lines of fighters. Flashing down from Olympus's height, she went to stand in Ithaca, before the manor, just at the door-sill of the court. She seemed a family friend. She didn't just seem, she put on a disguise, ladies and gentlemen, a disguise. And disguise is a major motif in the Odyssey. It's something you're going to see over and over. Someone in disguise. And our first disguise is that of Athena, a family friend, the Taphian captain Mentes, waiting with a light hand on her spear. Before her eyes, she found the lusty suitors casting dice inside the gate, at ease on hides of oxen. Oxen they had killed, lusty suitors. What are they lusty after? Well, food, okay, and they want Penelope. They want to marry Penelope because then they get to be the king of Ithaca. They get to rule Ithaca. They are lusty for power. They're lusty for Odysseus' wife. It's probably not going to end well for them. Their own retainers made a busy sight with houseboys mixing bowls of water and wine, or sopping water up in sponges, wiping tables to be placed about in hall, or butchering whole carcasses for roasting. So they're eating Telemachus out of house and home. Long before anyone else, the prince Telemachus now caught sight of Athena, in disguise, mind you, for he too was sitting there unhappy among the suitors, a boy, daydreaming. What if his great father came from the unknown world and drove these men like dead leaves through the place, recovering honor and lordship of his own domains? Then he who dreamed in the crowd gazed out at Athena. Here's Telemachus dreaming of having honor restored to his home. Something has been dishonored at his house. Straight to the door he came, irked with himself to think a visitor had been kept there waiting, and took her right hand, grasping with his left her tall bronze-bladed spear. Then he said warmly, "Greetings, stranger. Welcome to our feast. There will be time to tell your errand later." Oh, you mean Telemachus didn't ask why she's there? No, we're in Greece, guys. And in ancient Greece, you had to be very hospitable. Part of the code of hospitality was if you saw someone or someone came to your door, you didn't ask them why they were there. First, you gave them some food, you gave them clothing if they needed it, you gave them shelter, you tended to their horses, you didn't ask them any questions, you just gave them extreme hospitality, okay? So, you know how your parents tell you don't put your elbows on the table, chew with your mouth closed, all those manners? Manners were a big deal to Homer and all of the people in Greece at the time. People who didn't have good manners, they were not good people. Okay? And you're going to see this happening a lot in the Odyssey. It's really easy to find the good guys. They're the ones who show hospitality. The bad guys, they don't show good hospitality. Okay? It's very easy to find good and bad guys in this story. Let's continue. He led the way, and Pallas Athena followed into the lofty hall. The boy reached up and thrust her spear in a polished rack against a pillar where tough spear on spear of the old soldier, his father, stood in order. Then, shaking out a splendid coverlet, he seated her on a throne with footrest, all finely carved, and drew his painted armchair near her at a distance from the rest. To be amid the din is noise, the suitor's riot, would ruin his guest's appetite, he thought, and he wished privacy to ask for news about his father gone for years. A maid brought them a silver finger bowl and filled it out of a beautiful spouting golden jug, then drew a polished table to their side. The larder mistress with her tray came by and served them generously. A carver lifted cuts of fresh roast meat to put on trenchers before the two. He gave them cups of gold, and these the steward, as he went his rounds, filled and filled again. Now we're going to see the suitors. Listen to this description, this diction, describing these suitors. Now came the suitors, young bloods trooping in their own seats on thrones or easy chairs. Attendants poured water over their fingers, while the maids piled baskets full of brown loaves near at hand, and houseboys brimmed the bowls with wine. Now they laid hands upon the ready feast, and thought of nothing more. Not till desire for food and drink had left them were they mindful of dancing and song, that are the grace of feasting. A herald gave a shapely cithern harp to Phemios, whom they compelled to sing, and what a storm he plucked upon the strings for prelude. High and clear the song arose. Telemachus now spoke to grey-eyed Athena, his head bent close, so no one else might hear. Dear guest, will this offend you if I speak? It is easy for these men to like these things, harping and song. They have an easy life, scot-free, eating the livestock of another, a man whose bones are rotting somewhere now, white in the rain on dark earth where they lie, or tumbling in the groundswell of the sea. If he returned, if these men ever saw him, faster legs they'd pray for to a man, and not more wealth and handsome robes or gold. But he is lost. He came to grief and perished, and there's no help for us, and someone's hoping he still may come. That sun has long gone down. He's talking about his dad. He's kind of given up hope here that his dad's alive. But tell me now, and put it for me clearly, who are you? Where do you come from? Where's your home and family? What kind of ship is yours? And what course brought you here? Who are your sailors? I don't suppose you walked here on the sea. Another thing, this too I ought to know. Is Ithaca new to you, or were you ever a guest here in the old days? Far and near friends knew this house, for he whose name it was had much acquaintance in the world. To this the gray-eyed goddess answered. Now remember, she's still in disguise. You got to remember that. As you ask, I can account most clearly for myself. Mentes I am called, son of the veteran Achealos. I rule seafaring Tephos. I came by ship with a ship's company, sailing the wine-dark sea for ports of call on alien shores, to Tamise for copper, bringing bright bars of iron in exchange. My ship is moored on a wild strip of coast in Rethrun Bight, under the wooded mountain. Years back, now by the way, this is all a lie, you gotta realize that. She's making up a total story in the form of Mentes, okay? Years back, my family and yours were friends, as Lord Laertes knows. Now Laertes is Odysseus' dad. He's still alive, he tends this vineyard on a remote part of the island. He's not really involved in the story until the very end, okay? Ask when you see him. I hear the old man comes to town no longer, stays up country, ailing, with only one old woman to prepare his meat and drink when pain and stiffness take him in the legs from working on his terraced plot, his vineyard. As for my sailing here, the tale was that your father had come home, therefore I came. I see the gods delay him, but never in this world is Odysseus dead, only detained somewhere on the wide sea, upon some island with the wild islanders. Savages they must be to hold him captive. Well, I will forecast for you, as the gods put the strong feeling in me. I see it all. And I'm no prophet, no adept in bird signs. He will not now be long away from Ithaca. his father's dear land. Though he be in chains, he'll scheme a way to come. He can do anything, as any hero can, right? But tell me this now, make it clear to me. You must be, by your looks, Odysseus's boy? The way your head is shaped, the fine eyes. Yes, how like him. We took meals like this together many a time before he sailed for Troy with all the lords of Argos in the ships. I have not seen him since, nor has he seen me. And thoughtfully Telemachus replied, Friend, let me put it in the plainest way. My mother says I am his son. I know not surely. Who has known his own engendering? I wish at least I had some happy man as father, growing old in his own house. But unknown death and silence are the fate of him that, since you ask, they call my father. So Telemachus is like, yeah, my dad's dead. Okay. Then gray-eyed Athena said, The gods decreed no lack of honor in this generation. Such is the son Penelope bore in you. But tell me now, and make this clear to me. What gathering, what feast is this? Why here? A wedding? Revel? The expense of all? Not that, I think. How arrogant they seem, these gluttons making free here in your house. A sensible man would blush to be among them. Now, here, Athena, in the disguise of Mentes, is commenting on all of these suitors eating Telemachus out of house and hold. And she says, a sensible man would blush, a blush at these bad manners. These guys do not have good manners. It's not good. To this, Telemachus answered, Friend, now that you ask about these matters, our house was always princely, a great house, as long as he of whom we speak remained here. But evil days the gods have brought upon it, making him vanish, as they have, so strangely. Were his death known, I could not feel such pain. If he had died of wounds in Trojan country, or in the arms of friends after the war, they would have made a tomb for him, the Achaeans, and I should have all honor as his son. Instead, the whirlwinds got him, and no glory. He's gone, no sign, no word of him, and I inherit trouble and tears. And not for him alone, the gods have laid such other burdens on me. For now the lords of the islands, Dulichion and Same, wooded Zacynthus, and rocky Ithaca's young lords as well, are here courting my mother. And they use our house as if it were a house to plunder. Spurn them she dare not, though she hates that marriage, nor can she bring herself to choose among them. Meanwhile, they eat their way through all we have, and when they will, they can demolish me. Speaking of the suitors, they're coming from everywhere, from all these islands surrounding Ithaca, even the people from Ithaca themselves, these young lords, here they are trying to marry Penelope. They're courting her. Pallas Athena was disturbed and said, bitterly, you need Odysseus then. High time he came back to engage these upstarts. I wish we saw him standing, helmeted there in the doorway, holding shield and spear, looking the way he did when I first knew him. That was at our house, where he drank and feasted, after he left Ephyra, homeward bound from a visit to the son of Mermerus, Ilos. He took his fast ship down the Gulf that time for a fatal drug to dip his arrows in the poison the bronze points. But young Ilos turned him away, fearing the god's wrath. My father gave it, for he loved him well. I wish these men could meet the man of those days. They'd know their fortune quickly. A cold bed. Ooh, that's a fun metaphor for death. A cold bed. Aye, but it lies upon the god's great knees whether he can return and force a reckoning in his own house or not. I should take these steps to make these men... If I were you, I should take steps to make these men disperse. Listen now, and attend to what I say. Here Athena's going to give him some advice, as Mentes. At daybreak, call the islanders to assembly and speak your will, and call the gods to witness. The suitors must go scattering to their homes. Then, here's a course for you, if you agree. Send a sound craft afloat with 20 oars and go abroad for news of your lost father. Perhaps a traveler's tale or rumored fame issued from Zeus abroad in the world of men. Talk to that noble sage at Pylos, Nestor. Then go to Menelaus, the red-haired king at Sparta, last man home of all the Achaeans. If you should learn your father is alive and coming home, you could hold out a year. Or, if you learn that he is dead and gone, then you can come back to your own dear country and raise a mound for him and burn his gear with all the funeral honors due the man, and give your mother to another husband. When you have done all this, or seen it done, it will be time to ponder concerning these contenders in your house, how you should kill them, outright or by guile. You need not bear this insolence of theirs. You are a child no longer. Have you heard what glory young Orestes won when he cut down that two-faced man Aegisthus for killing his illustrious father? Ah, so here we start to see the parallel between Telemachus and Orestes. Remember, Orestes ended up avenging his father's death by killing Aegisthus. So I wonder what Telemachus is going to have to do to avenge the honor of his father being soiled by these suitors. Parallel plots, that's fun. Dear friend, you are tall and well set up, I see. Be brave, you too. And then in times to come we'll speak of you respectfully. Now I must join my ship. My crew will grumble if I keep them waiting. Look to yourself. Remember what I told you. Telemachus replied, Friend, you have done me kindness, like a father to his son, and I shall not forget your counsel ever. You must get back to sea, I know, but come, take a hot bath and rest. Accept a gift to make your heart lift up when you embark, some precious thing and beautiful from me, a keepsake, such as dear friends give their friends. But the gray-eyed goddess Athena answered him, Do not delay me, for I love the seaways. As for the gift your heart is set on giving me, let me accept it on my passage home, and you shall have a choice gift in exchange. With this, Athena left him. Now watch this. As a bird rustles upward, off and gone. But as she went, she put new spirit in him, a new dream of his father, clearer now, so that he marveled to himself, divining that a god had been his guest. Then, godlike in his turn, he joined the suitors. Here we have the first bird imagery in the Odyssey. There's a lot of interesting bird imagery you're going to see. It's a motif. And you see here that Telemachus has a hunch that a god or goddess has just visited him in the form of Mentees. How do we know that? It said, divining that a god had been his guest. He's chewing on this. He's ruminating. He's thinking, I think a god just visited me and gave me some advice. Now that's interesting. The famous minstrel still sang on before them, and they sat still and listened, while he sang that bitter song, the homecoming of Achaeans. By now Athena's will, they fared from Troy. And in her high room, careful Penelope, Icarios' daughter, heeded the holy song. So now we get to meet Penelope. I wonder what she's going to be like. She came then down the long stairs of her house, this beautiful lady with two maids in train attending her as she approached the suitors. And near a pillar of the roof she paused, her shining veil drawn over across her cheeks, the two girls close to her and still. And though her tears spoke to the noble minstrel, and through her tears she spoke to the noble minstrel. She's crying. Why is Penelope crying? Phemios, other spells you know, high deeds of gods and heroes, as the poets tell them. Let these men hear some other. Let them sit silent and drink their wine. But sing no more this bitter tale that wears my heart away. It opens in me again the wound of longing for one incomparable ever in my mind. His fame all Hellas knows, and midland Argos. So here Penelope's asking Phemios, the minstrel, he's like this bard, kind of like Homer. She's saying, don't sing the song of the men returning home from Troy. Now why would she be upset with a song about men returning home from Troy? Oh wait, her husband hasn't come home from Troy. She keeps being reminded of that, and it just makes her sad, and she cries. Now I wonder how Telemachus would reply to this. Listen, here we're going to see Telemachus. He's coming out of his childhood and becoming a man. He's going to address his mother like an adult. But Telemachus intervened and said to her, Mother, why do you grudge our own dear minstrel joy of song, wherever his thought may lead? Poets are not to blame, but Zeus, who gives what fate he pleases to adventurous men. Here is no reason for reproof to sing the news of the Danaans. Men like best a song that rings like morning on the ear. But you must nerve yourself and try to listen. Odysseus was not the only one at Troy never to know the day of his homecoming. Others, how many others, lost their lives, Mom? The lady gazed in wonder and withdrew, her son's clear wisdom echoing in her mind. Ooh, wisdom. Wasn't the first word from Zeus about Odysseus that he was wise? Perhaps like father, like son, as Telemachus is developing into a man. But when she had mounted to her rooms again with her two handmaids, then she fell to weeping for Odysseus, her husband. Gray-eyed Athena presently cast a sweet sleep upon her eyes. Meanwhile, the din grew loud in the shadowy hall, as every suitor swore to lie beside her. But Telemachus turned now and spoke to them. Imagine this. Telemachus is listening to these men talking about, oh, I'm going to get with Penelope. No, I'm going to get with Penelope. And here is Penelope's son listening to this insolence from the suitors. Now listen to what he says. You suitors of my mother, insolent men! Now we have dined, let us have entertainment and no more shouting. There can be no pleasure so fair as giving heed to a great minstrel like ours, whose voice itself is pure delight. At daybreak we shall sit down in assembly, and I shall tell you, take it as you will, you are all to leave this hall. Go feasting elsewhere, consume your own stores, turn and turn about, use one another's houses. If you choose to slaughter one man's livestock and pay nothing, this is rapine. And by the eternal gods, I beg Zeus, you shall get what you deserve. A slaughter here and nothing paid for it. By now, their teeth seemed to fix in their upper lips. Telemachus' bold speaking stunned them so. So Telemachus has never talked to the suitors like this before. And now we have our major antagonist, Antinous. He's going to reply. Antinous, Eupeithes' son, made answer, Telemachus, no doubt the gods themselves are teaching you this high and mighty manner. Zeus forbid you should be king in Ithaca, though you are eligible as your father's son. Telemachus kept his head and answered him, Antinous, you may not like my answer, but I would happily be king if Zeus conferred the prize. Or do you think it wretched? I shouldn't call it bad at all. A king will be respected and his house will flourish. But there are eligible men enough, heaven knows, on this island, young and old, and one of them perhaps may come to power after the death of King Odysseus. All I insist on is that I rule our house and rule the slaves my father won for me. Oh, here's the kind of the sub antagonist here. Eurymachus is his name. So Antinous and Eurymachus are kind of number one and number two in the bad guys at Odysseus' home. Eurymachus, Polybus' son, replied, Telemachus, it is on the gods' great knees who will be king in sea-girt Ithaca. But keep your property and rule your house, and let no man against your will make havoc of your possessions while there's life on Ithaca. But now, my brave young friend, a question or two about the stranger. Where did your guest come from? Of what country? So here Eurymachus is curious about Mentes, who was really Athena. Where does he say his home is and his family? Has he some message of your father's coming or business of his own asking a favor? He left so quickly that one hadn't time to meet him. But he seemed a gentleman. Of course, Eurymachus here is prodding for information. Maybe now that Telemachus has spoken to this person, he's becoming so brave and brass, maybe there's some information Eurymachus thinks he needs to know. Interesting. Telemachus made answer, cool enough, Eurymachus, there's no hope for my father. I would not trust a message if one came, nor any forecaster my mother invites to tell by divination of time to come. My guest, however, was a family friend, Mentes, son of Aeacus. He rules the Taphian people of the sea. So said Telemachus, though in his heart he knew his visitor had been immortal. Telemachus could just tell that this was a god or goddess. But now the suitors turned to play again with dance and haunting song. They stayed till nightfall. Indeed, black night came upon them in their pleasure, and half asleep they left, each for his own home. Telemachus' bedroom was above the court, a kind of tower with a view all around. Here he retired to ponder in the silence while carrying brands of pine, a light beside him. Euryclea went padding, sage and old. Now Euryclea is like like the main nurse or the main caretaker of the home, okay? Her father had been Ops, Pisaner's son, and she had been a purchase of Laertes when she was still a blossoming girl. He gave the prince of 20 oxen for her, kept her as kindly in his own house as his wife, though, for the sake of peace, he never touched her. So here we learn that Laertes, Telemachus' granddad, had actually purchased Euryclea as a slave. And back then, it was kind of typical for the man of the house to be able to sleep with the slave sometimes. And it says that Laertes was a man of honor. He did not sleep with Euryclea. So that shows that there is this sense of honor and respect of people, even women, in the house of Odysseus. No servant, we're talking of Euryclea here, loved Telemachus as she did, she who had nursed him in his infancy. So now she held the light as he swung open the door of his neat, freshly painted chamber. There he sat down, pulling his tunic off, and tossed it into the wise old woman's hands. She folded it and smoothed it, and then hung it beside the inlaid bed upon a bar. Then, drawing the door shut by its silver handle, she slid the latch in place and went away. And all night long, wrapped in the finest fleece, he took and thought the course Athena gave him. The course being that he needs to sail away. He needs to travel to Pylos to visit Nestor, who was a hero of the war, and then to Sparta to visit Menelaus, another hero of the war. We'll pick up on this assembly that's going to take place in chapter 2, called A Hero's Son Awakened.